You're listening to the 95Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to the 95 Podcast. This is Dale Sellers. I'm the Executive Director at 95 Network, and I'm today so excited to be with one of my friends who's actually been kind of a supporter of 95 Network since I've been here for 4 years now. Josh Robinson from Dover, Ohio. And Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we met in the very early days, conference down near Huntington, West Virginia, and have kind of partnered together for a couple of different things for the year. So it's always good to be able to catch up and see what you guys are doing, and excited to be able to share with you a little bit today.
Well, you know, you have been, as I said, you've been with us for a while, and you've taken part in some of our conferences, and you've also taken part in something, a kind of a new offering that we've created, really on the backside, not the completion of, because I don't know that the completion of the pandemic is completed, but the effect of the pandemic is certainly still touching us. But we created a thing called Digital Discipleship Coaching, and you kind of work through that. And so before I dive into that, kind of take a moment and give us the setting for your church, you know, where you are, you know, how many folks are showing up, and what it's been like on this side of the pandemic for you.
Yeah, so I serve a church in it's a Twin Cities kind of setting. Dover and New Philadelphia are two small towns that kind of meet together. All together is about 25,000 people in the metro area. And like a lot of places in Ohio, it's that, and then there's a lot of country outside of that. So even though 30,000 people city is not small, it's half the people in the county live in those two towns. And so it's a very rural, small town kind of setting. I've been here about 5 years. We are a church of about 115 people on a Sunday, give or take a little bit, depending on, you know, who's playing football that day or what the case may be.
Sure.
And so I come from a background of youth ministry. I did 15 and a half years of youth ministry before stepping into this role. And it's been good. You know, the pandemic was hard. I think there are a lot of things that were challenges in that, but I also think that there have been some good things that have come out of that. And us as a church, I can't speak to where everybody is, but we're probably in a better spot now than we were, 3 years ago when this whole thing started. So you try to find those blessings and find those opportunities to grow and change. And, you know, I heard you guys say it a ton of times on the podcast that use COVID as an excuse to change stuff. Yes, and we did do some of that, and it's put us in a spot where we're probably healthier now than we've been in my time here.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I want to dive into that. First, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to kind of dive into what you just said. So we'll be right back, folks. And welcome back. We're here with Josh Robinson. Before we dive into Josh's his last statement, which I thought was pretty cool, I want to remind everyone that we have created on the website two very important, I would call them surveys for pastors. One's called the Soul Care Essentials. I know, as we just discussed with Josh, that the effect of the pandemic it's taken its toll on a lot of pastors. And so we felt like at 95 Network that we needed to step back and offer some materials, some help, some phone calls, some videos, anything we can do to kind of come along beside pastors and serve them and encourage them in the arena of soul care. It doesn't matter if we have great materials to help you lead your church. If you're shot, you just probably aren't going to take advantage of that. So check out the Soul Care Essentials. And then also we have a Healthy Church survey that if you feel like you're doing okay, but you need some direction in your church, check those two things out. They're on the front of the website at 95network.org. Josh, you said that you were a youth pastor for 15 years. It was 15 years at the church you're at now?
No. So actually, in just kind of a weird, spiral of a story, my very first ministry was at this church. When I was still in Bible college, I did a 2-year internship working with students at this church. And then I was gone for about 13 years. And they called and asked me if I would come back and consider taking the senior ministry role back in 2017. So I have served here before, but there was a nice little break in between where I was elsewhere.
So you were youth pastor there, gone for a while, and then you came back as lead pastor and got your feet on the ground, got settled in, and then COVID hit.
Yeah, that was pretty much the experience. I started here in August of 2017, and we had, I think probably like a lot of guys, a lot of small churches. This church had some turmoil and some heartbreak and some just healing that needed to take place. And so we spent a couple of years just kind of trying to work through some of that hurt, get leadership established, get leadership feeling comfortable and ready to move forward. And it was heartbreaking when COVID first hit, because we really had some momentum going into the beginning of 2020. I'd been there just over 2 years, some things that we'd started to want to try and do. And you could kind of get the sense of, hey, things are headed in the right direction. And then all of a sudden you're not going to have church for 15 weeks. You're not going to gather in the building for quite a while. You're not going to be able to do so much of what we had planned and dreamed about. But so it was a long couple of years in the middle of that, and trying to figure out how to navigate that, and then trying to motivate people to keep moving forward in spite of what was happening around us. So that's kind of been our journey.
Your church, is it a vast degree of ages, or is it an older church? Is it what's the makeup of your church?
It's changing and shifting. We were mostly an older congregation when I came. We have added several young families over the past, couple of years. That was one of the heartbreaking things, is that a lot of those are the folks who didn't come back. I know a lot of churches had that experience of
young families.
Yeah, that we lost probably 20% of our congregation in the midst of COVID in terms of people attending regularly, and they were almost all young families.
Yeah.
That I think the best answer I can get from having conversations with those folks is they live that busy lifestyle. Their kids are in a whole bunch of stuff, and they kind of got used to not getting up on Sunday mornings and that being their family time, because they don't have any other family time. And it's been hard to get them back. Now we've added some new families that have started coming, but we probably still skew a little bit towards the older end, but we've really concentrated on reaching school age families, and we're seeing some of fruit from that.
How have you coped with that?
With which part?
People not coming back.
You
can be honest on our podcast too.
I'll be as honest. I learned a long time ago not to take stuff personal.
Okay.
Because of some things that I've dealt with personally within my family, everybody's got stuff that's going on. And unless someone says to me, I'm not coming back because I'm mad at you, then I just take it as they've got something else going on, and I'm going to keep reaching out to them until they tell me not to. But I'm not going to beat myself up over this person's decision. One of the hardest things I think to accept in ministry or life in general is I can't make people's choices for them. I can't make someone make a good choice or what I think is a good choice. And so you just have to accept where people are and keep moving forward. So I'm not going to say it was easy, but I learned a long time ago that if you take everything personal, I wouldn't be 20 years in right now. That's for sure.
Is this something that someone taught you, or is this the way you're wired? And I just wanted to dive into this a minute, because you are still in the middle of the weeds, but you seem to have a good balance, a good, healthy. Do you have people you reach out to? Do you have a group of support? How is it that you can have that good attitude? Because it's hard, dude. And
it is.
And I know it's hard, and I know you've experienced hard. We've experienced hard times too. And so there may be some hope you could give someone else today, or is this just the way you're wired?
I think so. Some of it comes from my upbringing. I grew up in a family of ministers. My grandfather was in ministry for 40 plus years. My dad was a minister for about a dozen, and then served as a church elder for another 30 or 40 years. I have two uncles who's made their life living in the church. So before I ever walked into a paid position in a church, I came in knowing what to expect. I came in knowing that there are some dark, ugly sides of the church. There are politics behind things. There are people who are going to do hurtful things. And I watched them cope with it. And so I kind of picked up from those conversations and kind of informal mentoring of just having all those guys who spent so much time leading the church around, that you pick up lessons on how to love people in spite of those choices, how to not let their choices affect who you are. But I mean, you asked the question, having a support system is so important. And like one of the best things I do is there are 3 or 4 other ministers in the area that we just, at least once a month, we get together, and it's not a formal group. We're not, it's not a ministers convention. It's just, hey, can I come get a cup of coffee and we can just talk about stuff? And that process, I think, allows you to gain perspective, because it's really easy for somebody outside to go, hey, Josh, don't take that personal, whereas when you're feeling it because it happened to you, you're feeling really upset and angry. But if you can share that with a friend who goes, hey, that just happens, and then I can do that for them in return, I can offer them that perspective in return. So I've got 3 or 4 friends in ministry that are within a 20-30 minute drive. And at least once a month, I'm having coffee with one of them or lunch with one of them and going, what's going on? How can I pray for you? Venting, sharing concerns, that kind of thing, and getting perspective. So I think that's really helpful.
Are they in your camp?
Some of them are. Yeah, some of them are. Some of them were part of that conference you came to at camp.
Yep.
Some of them are just friends that I've met through the years doing stuff.
I think it's good for us to hang out with folks that are, and when I mean camp, our denomination. I think it's great we see this a lot. This has been one of the encouraging things about doing a national ministry with 95 Network is I get to see lots of groups and I hear stories like what you just said. And it's been encouraging to hear that pastors from different denominations lay down all that stuff just to serve and bless and love on and receive from each other. And that's why I felt like that was important, because I think, we could reach our communities better if we'd work together.
Yeah.
It'd be really helpful.
Well, and what's interesting is I talk about it with our folks here at the church. I serve at a Christian church, Church of Christ, born out of the Restoration movement. And when I started 20 years ago, 80% of our congregation were all born and bred Christian church, Church of Christ folks. Like they grew up in it and their grandparents grew up in it. And half of them went to a Bible college that was, funded, Kentucky Christian College or whatever. Now my congregation is, grew up Lutheran and then married a Presbyterian and then started coming as a compromise, or was in the Catholic church for a long time. And then we tried a Pentecostal church, and now we're like, my whole church is this. And so there is an opportunity there. Some of that divisiveness that was there 20 years ago of, we are these people and we don't want to work with those people.
Yes.
That a lot of that's gone, at least from the congregational level. And so there are some opportunities for ministry to happen that I think is kind of cool.
One more thing I want to make sure we establish too. What setting are you in? You're a rural church more than a city church, correct?
Yeah. So it's the church itself is in a small town of about 25, 30,000, if you count New Philly together, but it's in the middle of Tuscarawas County. The entire county's got like 70,000 people in it. And so it's a lot of farming community. Amish country's right in our backyard. So if you're interested in some good home cooking or some handmade wooden furniture, it's about 15 minutes away from where we are.
How far are you from Millersburg?
Millersburg is about a 30-minute drive.
Yeah. So we're back there again in October, back there at Grace Church doing another conference. And I think, did we connect with you for breakfast?
You were staying at a hotel not too far from my house when you guys were there last time.
So I'm looking forward to breakfast again, my friend. And so we've kind of established that you have what I would think is a healthy small church. You have done well as you are navigating the impact of the pandemic. And what I have said from the start was, if you were on the right trajectory before the pandemic, it was hard, but you got through it. Whereas if you were on the wrong trajectory, it exposed lots of things. And I'm not sure a lot of churches will recover from that. So then all of a sudden how did you find out about Jesse and Barnett on our team who does digital discipleship coaching? How did that come about? Do you remember?
I was just listening to the podcast and you guys had him on as a guest. Probably it's been maybe 6 months ago, something like that. And, for us, one of the things when I talk about being able to make changes through the pandemic, I'm a natural technology driven person. I'm an early adopter kind of guy. Let's try stuff. I was building websites from scratch back in like 2002 when I first started ministry. And like, that's just my mindset. There's new technology. Let's play with it. And so the pandemic kind of gave me an excuse to buy stuff. Hey, we need some better cameras. We need some better microphones.
I'm just telling you, milk it for 10 more years.
And so now we had all these resources and we were still live streaming, but it was like, if you were paying attention during the pandemic and watching just how engaged people could be in an online ministry, that if you were doing good stuff and intentional stuff, like I think back, it's like Christmas 2020, we did a series of live stream. My family we do an Advent reading leading up to Christmas. That's what I do with my kids. We sit down, the 4 Sundays leading up and we read scripture and pray and sing a song together. And so we decided to bring all that live stream equipment home and we just live streamed from my living room.
That's cool.
These Advent things of me sitting with my kids and telling the Bible story and talking about hope and faith and, love and all that stuff. And watching the engagement out of that, of people responding to that, asking questions about that. Like there was such an opportunity to reach people there. And so when I What I've not been able to wrap my brain around is what does that actually look like on a consistent basis?
Mm-hmm.
I know what it looks like at Easter, to do a cool Good Friday thing, or I know how to Sunday morning, but how can we, on a regular, consistent basis, without overwhelming ourselves, provide this opportunity? And so I heard Jesse on the podcast and thought that's exactly what I'm looking for. And so I wanted to jump in and learn what I could and take advantage of that.
I've been saying for some time now, and I think I might have not gotten to this point yet when we did our conference together, but I've been encouraging pastors for at least a year and a half. You've got to change your weekly schedule. You have a rhythm. Pastors have a rhythm. Some pastors, they take Mondays off and then, they work the week. Some people, they take Fridays off. Whatever your schedule is, you've got to block out. I wish they would block an entire day to focus on online ministry, where I know most pastors will never do that. But at least take a half a day and do it. And we did a podcast back in, I think it was in June, with Tony Morgan. Had Tony back on. And Tony kept talking about the fact, the purpose of social media was never to do advertising or promote stuff. Social media was just a place to connect with people. And I think a lot of churches missed what you experienced with the Christmas thing, because they were so busy just trying to live stream the service that they didn't just meet people where they are. And that's why we've asked Jesse to help us with this whole concept of learning. We want you to be able just to be you. And to share with people. And I also want to establish this, because I'm getting a lot of pushback right now that we've begun to meet in person again. A lot of churches, the smaller and mid-sized churches, are going, well, we don't need to do online anymore. And I'm going, that's where you're going to meet the new people. You can't can that. And here's Josh from a country church in Ohio. And you're making it work. So kind of dive into that right there. As I said some of that stuff, what did that trigger in your thinking?
Well, the thing we keep talking about with our leadership here is, and I use this analogy with them a lot. When I did youth ministry, I spent every fiber of energy I had trying to get into schools. Mm-hmm. I coached football, I led after school programs, and my logic always was that's where the kids are. Yep. I've got my 15, 20, 30 kids that come to my group, but all those kids that I don't know, they're hanging out at the middle school. And so if I can coach football, or I can run the after school tutoring program or whatever, then I'm going to get a chance to meet those kids, connect with those kids. Mm-hmm. And in youth ministry, you know how that works. Like, I build a relationship, and then eventually I hand them a flyer for our all-nighter, and they show up and go bowling and swimming with us. And then one of my other kids invites them to camp, and it begins this, into that funnel of ministry. Mm-hmm. And so now the question is, well, where are the people? And the answer is the people are online. Mm-hmm. And so if I want to connect with those people, that's where we need to be. And so that was kind of our motivating factor into really spending a significant amount of time, a significant amount of energy on doing that. And what we've seen is not so much the immediate jump in engagement. I'm hoping that will come, that people will respond to these things that we're doing, and mm-hmm. we'll have great conversations. But what I have seen is, and this will be encouraging to any of you thinking about trying this, is we've seen an increase at our in-person stuff because of the online things that we're doing. The number of new guests who walk in, I say, hey, do you get invited by a friend, or how'd you find us? I saw something online and thought I'd stop in and check you out. And not just our Sunday morning worship, but like our youth minister runs an open gym basketball, and he's got kids who pop in because they found our Facebook page, because people are responding to what we're doing, and now they're seeing more of what we're doing. And so he's got kids popping in to play basketball because of that online presence. So it is effective in terms of making those contacts with people you'd never meet otherwise, and being kind of a gateway into the ministry that you're trying to do, the entrance ramp, so to speak.
I just got to tell you, I'm so proud of you, because you don't know it all. You're just trying to find a way to make it work. When I grew up in the 70s, 90% of all the people who became a Christian did it before their 18th birthday. The last statistics that I have seen said that almost 98% do it before they turn 20.
Yeah.
And so if you just decide, well, we're just not going to have an online presence, and I keep trying to drive this point home, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be, oh, we're just going to be online, or we're just going to be in person. We need both and, because meeting new people, that's where you're going to, and honestly, most of the people who ever come to your church are going to check you out online first. So if you have a website that doesn't work or don't even have a website, and even if you have just a Facebook page, make sure that thing is up to date, because you're trying to reach people who don't know Jesus, and you've seen that work for you guys, correct?
Yeah, and that's been the benefit of it. And like I said, we've only really been genuinely doing the stuff I worked with Jesse for about 2 months. And everything you read is, the 9, 10, 12 month mark, is when we'll really start to see some of those metrics go where you want, and you'll see that growth. But already we're seeing people walk in our door on a Sunday morning because they saw something online. And so that in and of itself, for the effort that's going into it, to be able to reach one person is worth it, I think, and so I feel like it's been effective for us, and we're not in a big city. We're not a big mega church. We don't have a ton of resources, and it's working,
Would Jesus be online if he were here today?
Oh, I think Jesus would be wherever people are. And that's why I said that's like, so we sat down in this coaching call with Jesse, and there were a lot of the folks you met at camp. Actually, I put together kind of my own group. Mm-hmm. I had reached out to Jesse, and he didn't have a group that was starting. And I said, what if I contact some guys and we put together a group? So we, like 6 or 7 guys that I do ministry with, we all took the course together. Mm-hmm. And one of the younger guys was like, I don't know about all this Facebook stuff. A lot of younger people aren't on Facebook. Can we do? And so we pulled up the stats, and it's like every age bracket is at least 70%. Yes. From senior citizens to high school kids to middle school kids, it's 70% of people in every age bracket. And among certain groups, it's 80-85% are on Facebook at least like once a month. And so where else are you going to? You just do the math. We're a town of 30,000. If I can reach 75% of those people, where else am I going to have that opportunity?
Nowhere. So I'm going to ask you this question, and you made me think about this. So you have followed through very well. What have your other friends done? Do you know?
Nothing.
Have they really not?
No, not a thing. I get on them all the time.
They went through the training. All right. So you get on them a little bit. Kind of. Do you know why they haven't followed through?
I think I know the one guy's in the midst of going through transition. He's moving from an associate role to a senior ministry role. Okay. And when he gets to the other side of that transition, he plans to use some of the stuff. The last time I talked to him, he's kind of waiting until he's in that role. That happens at the end of this calendar year, and he's got some plans to put some of that stuff into action. I think the idea of doing something, because what Jesse challenges you to do is to post a video every day of the week, to do 5 videos a week. That's his plan is Monday through Friday, you've got a 3-minute video. Mm-hmm. And I think that can sound intimidating to some people, to put through that work, to find that time, because we're all busy.
They have to block time to do it.
We're all busy. Well, and I'll tell you, the other thing that helped us is I say studio. We built a studio. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is I took a corner of our attic and I bought a fancy little photo backdrop that looks like a brick wall. And I bought some lights. And I bought a tripod for my phone, and I bought a Bluetooth microphone, so that I can literally walk up into our attic, and it's sometimes not a very pleasant temperature. Set up, getting all the gear out, cleaning all the gear up week after week. I would never have done it. And so I've encouraged them to take that step. They've not yet done that, but that for me was the biggest step from inconsistency to consistency. Is I now have this place that I don't have to do anything. I literally walk up, push a button, put my phone on, and start recording. And that's made a huge difference for me.
Do you have a certain day that you do this?
Oh yeah. I'm pretty routine driven.
Most pastors
and so I write on Sunday night before I go to bed, because one of the best parts of what Jesse does is he teaches you with some very simple tools how to take what you did on Sunday morning and turn it into content for the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. So you're not actually creating anything new.
We call that getting mileage out of your message.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I sit down on Sunday night after my kids are in bed, and Sunday night I write my scripts for the next morning, and then I record first thing Monday morning. And by noon Monday morning, I'm all done. So I've recorded everything, I've edited everything, I've scheduled everything out. By noon on Monday, I'm done for the week. And that's kind of become my routine. And it involved a shift in my schedule. I had to move something off of Monday morning Monday morning used to be emails and follow up and that kind of stuff. And I had to move that so that I could get this done and make it a priority.
Every pastor out there can take a half a day and focus on this stuff. The difference is whether you want to or not. And one of the things, I don't want to get into a lot of this because I'm actually in the middle of writing a new book. And one of the things that I have said for years, you'll love this. So I have said for years that one of the biggest issues in our small churches is that we don't follow through and there's no accountability. So like in this case, some guys go and they take the course with Jesse, but then they don't follow through and nobody's going to hold their feet to the fire. I have discovered that there is accountability. The accountability is the people we're not reaching. The accountability is there's nothing wrong with being, in a small church, but I do believe with all my heart that as long as there's a lost person still in your town, you're not done. And we have discovered it. I don't know how we can drive it home any clearer that if you want to reach new people, you got to have some kind of online presence. And so for your friends, that they could be doing exactly what you've been doing and getting on here and testifying. Yeah, and we got these new people popping in, and maybe it's not 20 people a week, but that you are connecting with people. And so I'm hoping that our pastors are listening right now understand, there actually is some accountability when you don't even follow through with the things you've been trained to do. And again, sometimes there's a learning curve, and you named all the stuff that you have and all your studio. You don't have to do all that.
No,
you can literally, get a tripod. You don't have to get a tripod if you don't want to. I used to record a video every day. Back in the day, I just sit on my back porch and hold my phone.
Yeah.
And it's not about, hey, everybody come to our church. It's about meeting people where they are, what their needs and stuff are. And so I want to encourage everybody. Look, there's just not an easier way to reach new people than what's been provided for us. And a lot of it's almost free.
There's so much I want to say.
Go ahead, dive in. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And then as soon as we come after the break, I want you to format those thoughts, and I'm going to turn you loose. Okay. You ready?
Okay. All right.
Okay. Short break here, and we'll be right back. We're back with Josh, and I've given him a moment to kind of gather his thoughts here. Before he dives in, I want to let everybody know, if you lead a church, you lead a ministry, and you need some strategic help. And I know strategy is such a crazy word for small churches. All it means is developing a plan. We do something called Vision Day at 95 Network, where we come in and we work with an individual church with you and your leaders, typically do it on a Saturday because most small churches have volunteers who help lead the church. And if that's something you'd be interested in, go to the website at 95network.org. And there's a tab at the top that says Vision Day, and check that out. And I'd love to have a conversation with you if you'd be interested in that. So that I just want to make sure that you know that, hey, there's help available to help you kind of define that plan as you move forward. All right, Josh, dive in. tell us your thoughts.
I want to start with, I think it's a story I've heard you tell before, but you talk about coming on staff at a church. And the first thing you did was you went and looked at their baptistry, and the thing had like algae in it, and it hadn't been used in months.
It wasn't algae, brother. It was sawdust. It had been used
sawdust.
eight years. It had dead mice. It had sawdust in it because our baptistry was actually built into the stage.
Okay.
And it hadn't been used in 8 years.
And it's amazing to me how many churches are okay with that.
Oh, it blows my mind.
And so I am not a numbers guy, in terms of tracking attendance each week. And that's not me, but that number matters. How many people are you introducing to Jesus on a regular basis? Like that number, if you go 8 years and go, you know what, we haven't really introduced anybody to Jesus in 8 years. There's a problem in your church. And so part of the question you have to ask yourself when we're talking about this online presence is, do we believe that the message we have is actually worth the people who don't know Jesus hearing? Like, do we actually believe we have something to say that is going to meet not a felt need, not a temperate, but a real deep spiritual need in these people? And if we do, then why are we not using every method within our means to share that message with them? Like, why are we okay just being us and going through our calendar and doing stuff and not using our baptistry for 8 years? How does a church get in that mindset of, because what you're really saying is, I don't think what we have to sell here is worth buying. I don't feel like we really have anything to offer the world. Like you may not really think that, but that's what you're saying with your actions. And so I believe that the message we teach here in our church can change the lives of people in our community. I really believe that.
That's so good.
And so I want to share that with people in whatever way allows me to do that. And so if technology lets me reach somebody I would never have a chance to talk to otherwise, then I have an obligation to follow through on that, and that's like, what's awesome about what Jesse does is, you're right. You don't have to have a studio. He's going to walk you through in baby steps that if you've never used Facebook before in your life, you're going to get to the end of it and be able to do something. Because of my background with tech, we do a lot more than what he, kind of the basic stuff, because I know how things work.
Yeah.
But at the very least, he's going to get you to something that's going to allow you to start to reach those people. And I feel a real urgency to share the gospel with those people. And this is a platform where I can do that, because I think the gospel changes lives.
I believe we're in the midst of a reformation. I believe that with all my heart. I believe the church around the world is alive and well. I believe the church in America has cancer. And I believe the Lord is using the impact of the pandemic to help us go down to the bare bones level foundation and go, okay, why do we do what we do?
Mm-hmm.
And so many churches were not reaching people and we're not engaging with people before the pandemic. That's why once they loosened things up and we began to meet, all the stadiums were full last year, all the, the arenas, the concerts, malls, everything was full except for one thing. And it was the church. And all that says to me is that we weren't engaging people beforehand like we needed to. They were just coming along for the ride, and it's been difficult for pastors because you've talked about it today. Some of your key people didn't come back, and I see pastors spending more time focusing on the key people who didn't come back instead of acknowledging there's all these people in the community who want to know about Jesus. But it's kind of like, we got to get past this thing of, all right, y'all come and see. That's not what he told us to do. He said, go and tell. And you have such an easy opportunity to go and tell through using online means to reach people. Again, you want to get them there in person. And that's what you've testified has happened for you. They do show up in person, but you got to take that first step to reach out to them. Does that fire you up?
Oh, it does. I'm all about that. In fact, I had a meeting. I sat down with Karis yesterday, who you just had on the podcast a couple of months ago, and we're going to follow up with her. And I was showing her all the stuff we were doing out of Jesse's, and she's like, so what do you want my help with? And I said, I just want more. Like, I want you to tell me, how can we do this better? Where do I need to be posting? What can we build on what we're doing? And it's not an instant fix, but it
ain't rocket science either.
No, it's not, but it has the potential. Again, if I told you that by spending 4 hours a day at a local restaurant, you could preach the gospel to 10 new people a week, you'd show up, right? And that's what this does, is it gives me a platform to share the truth of what God has for people in the midst of real suffering and real depression and real grief and real people are struggling. And if you believe we have the answer, like, you want to run with that.
Take advantage of what's out there. If you are on Facebook or on especially Instagram, oh my goodness, I just about can't even look at it anymore because every other thing is a commercial or it's an ad.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that, because they know that's where the people are. And in the business world, advertising is everything. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest product in the world. In our case, the greatest news in the world. If we never tell anybody, it doesn't help them. And so, business models, everything, they're out there advertising, they're pushing, they're doing all that stuff. So at least we should be taking advantage of what's available to us. So what I want to do in the time we have left, kind of walk us through some of the things that Jesse taught you guys.
Yeah. So the basic thing, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, things you found helpful.
So he's going to start you with walking through your Sunday morning message. And I don't want to give away too much because I don't want to take away from what he does, but he's going to teach you how to take your Sunday morning message and kind of outline it into 5 2 to 3 minute videos. What that looks like for me usually is a couple of the things are, I usually use an illustration that I used in my sermon because I find like stories and stuff connect well with people. So if I told a story or a joke or made a connection to a movie, I'll use that in one of the videos. And basically you're taking the things that you already said. And then the other thing is, I find for me, and I can't speak for other preachers, but I usually write a 40-minute sermon and then edit it down. Like there's usually a bunch of stuff that I have that I think is really good, but in order to fit the confines of our service, I'm like, I can't say everything. So I'm going to kind of set that. And so sometimes I'll take one or two of those things that I was going to say on Sunday and I didn't, to build on that. And then he's going to teach you the technology part. How do I record it? How do I upload it? How do I schedule it? How do I make it sound good? And he'll give you some recommendations for like, this is the basic. You could go a little bit further and do it this way. You could buy this. You don't have to buy this. So that at the end of the process, you've got 5 videos that build on the work you already did for the previous Sunday morning.
See, that's what I love about this is I used to hate when I was pastoring, you'd spend time and you get this message together. And then as soon as you get through, at 1 o'clock on Sunday, it's like, oh, that thing's gone. I put all that effort into it. In an hour of a service, it's gone. And this whole concept of getting more mileage out of your message, this is why we did this. And Jesse's done a great job helping pastors. And I love the fact you just said that, even some of the stuff that you couldn't plug into your message, you were able to use that as well. Because the Lord's one giving you all these ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's exactly what I was looking for. Like my first conversation with Jesse was, I want to do this. I know the value in this, but this can't be something that takes me 10 hours a week. And if I've got to spend 10 hours a week doing this, I won't do it. Like I know myself well enough. I know how busy I am. It's got to be something that and I'm a systems guy. Like my brain works that way, that I want to do the same thing every week. And so he gives you that. And he gives you the tools, some fillable PDFs where you just go through and type stuff out. And the other thing I'll say for him, when we did our post session call, my biggest compliment to him was, and preachers need to hear this, the thing he drives home again and again and again is, ask yourself what the benefit of what you're saying is.
Yeah.
That if you're going to talk to people, they need to know, how does this actually help me in real life? And preachers need to hear that, not just for their online videos, but for their sermons.
We have had multiple pastors tell us that they're actually preaching, they're designing their sermons better because of the program, this process.
It is so easy for us to fall into Bible teacher mode, where we're like, and here's the Greek word, and here's the historical context, and here's what this means, and never get to and this is why it matters.
Yes.
And so like the one thing that his structure does for me is he really pushes, like every single video, tell them why it matters and tell them what they should do. And some of us need that in our preaching, but
I'm really, that's what I'm thinking.
Some of us really need that. And it's a good challenge for me not to just get up and like, well, let me tell you about Psalm 138 and what it says, but to actually connect it to what people are going. And like, there's a real big push now in preaching towards like preaching to felt needs, that what people, and like part of me pushes back against that because we're not psychologists or whatever.
Sure.
But there are a lot of places where felt needs and real needs overlap. And so if you can take someone's felt need and actually say what you're feeling is not the actual need, what you're really feeling is this, the gospel's got answers for those things.
Didn't Jesus kind of do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Jesus did that.
Isn't that what the whole New Testament is him taking the kingdom, the gospel of the kingdom and teaching them through fishing stories or planting stories or trees or birds. Telling stories, we call them parables, to help us relate and understand the gospel. Didn't he take something that was, let's John Maxwell quote 101. Educators take things that are simple and make them complicated. Communicators take things that are complicated and make them simple. Wasn't Jesus a communicator there?
Well, and I even think like I love to teach through the I am statements in John, because that's exactly what he does. He takes people who are hungry physically,
yes,
and then he makes that connection that what you really need is not physical bread but spiritual bread, and I am the bread of life. Or he goes to Martha and Mary, who are grieving and overwhelmed with grief, and what they think they need is for their brother to not be dead, but what they really need is the resurrection and the life, who even in the midst of physical death offers. So he looks at what they feel and goes, what you're feeling isn't the real problem. Let me show you the real problem. And then let me show you the solution to that. And so Jesse just does a great job of really pushing you to like, why does what you have to say matter? Why should someone listen to you? And I think that's good, not just in the video setup, but even in our Sunday morning services. We all need that reminder from time to time.
That's so cool. Is there any other teaching or coaching he does beyond this?
No, he and I talked about, I think at some point he really should put together a follow-up class. And I say that as someone who a lot of the tech stuff he taught, I knew, like I'm just, and like not everybody's wired that way. Some people need here's the record button on your phone. Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that, because he's going to go through that and he's going to give you sheets for that. But I told him what I would love to have had was a couple more weeks that went a little bit further and a little bit deeper into so much of social media is algorithm based and like getting seen by people, and what keywords do I use and that kind of stuff. And that's actually some of the stuff Karis and I are going to work through, because she really understands that stuff.
You talked to Karis, and we need to say that Karis was on our podcast. I think she was the first week of July or somewhere in there. Karis Horton, and she just graduated college. She just graduated, and she just learned a few things about social media, and she's got 100,000 followers on YouTube. And it's just amazing what she can help you with. So she would be another good resource as well. But I do want you to know, Jesse's listened to you, because he's actually unveiling a whole new next level of this, if you will.
Awesome.
That's coming out soon. So, but I appreciate you reaching out to Karis as well, because again, we just want to provide help for you guys. If you don't know what to do, I don't know if I will go here, but I think I will. I keep meeting pastors who, some of them are in their later years of life, who've decided to go back to church, to school and get their doctorate. And I'm like, why? Why don't you learn the stuff that we're talking about today to reach people? I mean, and if that's their motivation. And it's like, when you don't know what to do, you always go back to your default. And sadly, I think in a lot of cases, our default hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And so there's opportunities today, very easy, very simple. And it's amazing to me how the church has just discounted the ability to use online opportunities to reach people. I don't understand it.
Can you imagine, this is one I shared with our leadership a while back. Can you imagine if, when the printing press was invented, the church had decided, you know what, this new technology is not for us. We're not going to print the Bible on the printing press. We're going to stay handwriting scrolls and keeping everything in. Like, can you imagine how far that would have set the church back if they had looked at this technology that allowed them to reach people in new and incredible ways and gone, we don't want anything to do with that. Like, what a waste that would have been.
I just got to tell you, Josh, I don't understand it. I mean, I'm at a loss and I've been doing this for a long time, but when it comes to this one issue, I just don't, maybe it's the fear of the unknown. That's why we have digital discipleship coaching. That's why we have Jesse and Karis and all these people to help. But I don't know. I just can't figure that one out. I mean, like your friends, and we haven't named them, so we're not calling them out. Why they would go through the coaching process and then have a friend like you saying this works, and I just don't have time for that. And I'm like, what do you do? It's time to work smarter, not harder.
Well, I'll share this one last thing. I had my youth minister who is coming along in a lot of this process with me. He took the coaching with me. We're gonna go through Karis' stuff together, because I want him to apply a lot of what we're doing with his kids too, because they're online even more and in different ways than our adults are. And so we're working through that. And he made the comment, he goes, I never thought I'd become a content creator. That's kind of weird, because that's the name for these people who make their living on. And my response to him in that moment was, preachers have always been content creators
every day.
I think back to when my grandfather started ministry, and he was preaching on Sunday morning and leading a Sunday night service and teaching Sunday school and teaching. He was creating content. The difference is people don't want to, they're not coming into the building 5 times a week to hear it anymore. So now I got to take that content I'm creating and put it in a platform and in a place where they can see it. But we've always been content creators.
Yes.
That's for the entire existence of the church. That's what we've meant. It's just a different platform.
You and I both know the Bible speaks to every issue known to man.
Yep.
But the world doesn't know that. And some Christians don't know that. So our job is to take the gospel and the scriptures and break them down and make it where they can understand them. And that's why we really need to adopt this philosophy sometimes on our Sunday mornings. Some preachers preaching and he's preached 45 minutes and it's like, now the Holy Spirit just came on me and I'm going to go another 15 minutes. Oh, I'm not sure that was the Holy Spirit. Maybe you needed to study a little harder, but I'm not going to go there. because here's one of the things, and here's why I said that, because one of the things I encourage every lead pastor to do is I think every lead pastor in America ought to work in the nursery 2 Sundays out of the year. And then when it goes long, you'll understand what you're doing to those poor people who volunteer. Maybe that's why you can't get volunteers, is because you keep blaming the Holy Spirit for everything. And so what we want you to do is be more strategic, think this stuff through a little better. And if you don't know how to do it, we got coaching for you.
And it really is accessible. I mean, that's what I would say is, if you are, in your 60s and you're finishing up your 30th year of ministry or your 35th year of ministry, and you're going, I don't know what I want to learn. One, you have more to offer than I do.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So much to offer right there. Wow.
I've got 2 retired preachers in my church, and they're my favorite people to sit in my Sunday school class or Bible study, because they have so much wisdom. I'll prepare all week, and they'll pull something out that is just so insightful. And so you have so much to offer. And Jesse's going to give you a way that you can do it. And he's so accessible and so responsive that he'll work with you until you get it. And, it's funny how the shift has happened, because when online media first started, I always felt a big pressure towards everything has to look great. It's got to sound great. It's got to look great, because the only thing people had ever seen was on TV. And so, like, early days of YouTube, there was this like pressure to like high quality videos, high quality micro. That's not the case anymore.
People,
content trumps
real, man.
Content trumps your quality any day of the week. And so if you're afraid or you're scared, you're like, I can't do that, especially with that age learning gap, like it's not expensive. It's worth the investment. Spend the money to go sit with Jesse. It's better than a grad class. It's more practical than a grad class. I've got my master's degree, I'm looking at PhD classes. I'm not against education. I'm just telling you, it's more practical than a grad class. And he'll get you to the point where you can start and see what happens.
So do you mind me giving your email address out in the show notes in case anybody wants to reach out to you?
No, that's fine.
Even further, because, again, we're not trying to sell anything. We're trying to help. Yep. And Jesse, I mean, it's very affordable to go through the digital discipleship coaching. If you want to know more about it, you can go to the website today, look on our strategic, in our coaching page. And there's videos, everything's there. In fact, we're about to update those videos. Jesse's going to do a new video pretty soon. But we just want to help you. We want to help you reach people. It's not about online. It's not about being slick and cool. It's about saving souls.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. And that's what I love about you, Josh. You've communicated that throughout the whole day, that the purpose of all this is to see, and hey, if you put all that effort into it and one soul comes to Christ, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
I used to hear people criticize Billy Graham back in the day, and they go, well, how do you know that of those 40,000 people who came forward that they gave their life to Jesus? I'm going, what if only half did? What are you? What if
10% did?
Come on, folks. We got to go. We got to go. There's people who need to know Jesus. So, Josh, today you're talking to hundreds of small, mid-sized church leaders. If you were sitting down with a cup of coffee with them and you could give them a word of encouragement or advice or hope, what would you tell them today?
I would tell them to continue to be faithful. One of the most important things to me in my ministry has been to remind myself that worldly definitions of success don't matter, that even the church's definition of success doesn't matter. God has called me to be faithful. And I remember discovering that for the first time about 10 years ago. I did a deep dive in the book of Acts, and you see Paul, and sometimes he shows up and he plants churches and hundreds of people respond, and those churches are there thousands of years later. And sometimes he shows up and he preaches and they try to kill him, and he was just faithful. Yeah. And we trust the Holy Spirit to work. We trust the Holy Spirit to reach people. And so just as long as you feel like you're using the gifts and talents God gave you to faithfully proclaim the message, to minister to people, to equip the saints to do ministry, don't be discouraged by whatever the numbers may say.
That's it.
Don't be discouraged by whatever other people's definition of success may be. Just be faithful. And that's what you've been called to do.
That's so good, man. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your heart. And thank you for being a friend of 95 Network. I mean, we consider you to be one of the pillars of our ministry, because we have a friendship.
Well, I appreciate what you guys do so much. I appreciate what you do so much. We met for the first time because I had this job. I walked in August. I'd done youth ministry my whole life, and I started looking for resources for senior ministers. And everything that I found was written by the people at Willow or the people at Saddleback. And I'm going, at that point, we had 75 people in my church on a Sunday. Like, the stuff Willow's doing isn't going to work here.
Mm-mm.
And the two things I found were the 200 Churches podcast. And then you were the very first guest on that podcast that I heard. And I was like, they're starting this new ministry for small churches. I'm going to find them. And shortly thereafter, I mentioned at that conference down in Southern Ohio. And we've been able to build on that relationship. And I love what you guys do.
Thank you so much. You're why we do it, and I want to see healthy churches. We have a crazy vision here at 95 Network. We want to bring healthy change to every church in America. And so, why not believe God for something big, Well, thank you again for your time. Appreciate it so much, man. And again, folks, I'll give you his email if you want to reach out to Josh and connect with him. And also go to the website and just look under our coaching page, and you can learn more about digital discipleship coaching. Thank you again, Josh.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.